Ladies and gentlemen, this is the GameOverGreggy show where we post it for $1 on GameOverGreggy.bandcamp every Friday. Then Monday we start rolling out the videos for your enjoyment. What it is 5 friends, sometimes 4, get together, each with a random topic for discussion. Mine for the week is that I think The Walking Dead is the new Star Wars. Discuss.
Here's my deal about that.
The fuck does that mean?
Here's my deal.
I think that, you know, when Star Wars was happening, and we weren't alive,
Yeah.
people didn't think this thing's gonna be with us for fucking 50 years. It's gonna eventually be bought by Marvel. You know, blah, blah, blah. It's not, they didn't think of all the permutations of it happening. That's happening right now with The Walking Dead, and we're taking it for granted. Nobody's seeing the bigger picture. I think Walking Dead is Star Wars. Expanded universe. It already has books. It starts from comic books into books, into games, into board games. Movies are guaranteed to happen eventually. You know, I think it's going to continue to mutate this way.
Is that a guarantee? Is like movies and
that's
like
what I'm saying. Oh,
no, but movies like is that something? Because
yes,
to me,
100%.
Walking Dead seems very like a lot of people are into it that you'd never think. Like I know a lot of my friends that love it, and I would never peg them as zombie people.
Right.
So that says something because like same shit with Star Wars, where a lot of people aren't star people.
Sci-fi fans.
Star people.
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree with Greg, though, on one thing. Is that I think zombies are really popular right now. I think it's perfect situation for that franchise.
Nice.
But I don't think zombies are going to be popular forever. It's going to eventually dip back down.
But that's what we said for...
And pirates or ninjas will come up. My point is that I feel like the reason why Star Wars transcends
can't wait for ninjas to come back into vogue.
is that it has notable characters. It's not like I don't think anyone can find attachment to zombies as a thing. I don't know. I think like Star Wars just has that perfect set of themes, characters.
Yeah, I hear that. The thing is that people have been saying the zombie genre was going to die out for years. And for so long.
I don't
Same
know.
with
I wish it
vampires.
would.
It's not going to die. It'll go down.
It'll come back.
It'll come back up. But I don't think zombies is going to be up.
See, I think
forever.
the Walking Dead thing too is that you can always have another character in another world. The TV show ends, the comic book keeps going because that's what they talk about, right? And Rick dies, and it's all about Carl. And then in 5 years from now, they do a Carl movie, not related to the TV show. But
Rick
based on
died?
that. No, he hasn't. But I'm saying
okay.
Spoilers for everybody watching and reading if you haven't caught up. But yeah, no, Rick and Carl are still alive in both forms of media. But I'm saying one day Rick dies, Carl takes over.
Yeah, I think. All right, so here's what I think about this. I agree with Jim that zombies are running their course very clearly.
We've been saying that for a long time.
I don't think they've been saying that for a long time because everything is a product of what was going on a few years ago. These things just don't materialize, right? So like a game that's being developed, like State of Decay or something, took time and it was.
Yeah, but I mean, dude, there were
inspiration
stubs
from-
of the zombie on Xbox original. People liked.
Yeah, but the zombies thing.
Dead
the original
Rising
Xbox
was the thing
not,
on the Xbox 360 when it was.
Yeah, well, that's a different generation. No one gave a shit about zombies in the early 2000s. That was not a thing in the early 2000s.
Evil.
Resident Evil is really not
When
so much about
Once
zombies.
Call of Duty put zombies in its game, that's when people start caring.
Yeah,
about
and I think this above all else, Star Wars is fucking trash now. But like The Walking Dead doesn't have. The Walking Dead doesn't have that cash. The Walking Dead's got a few years left until no one cares about it anymore. Like the comic books might continue. The game might do well season 2, whatever, we'll see. I like season 1 very much. I like the show a lot. I don't read the comics, but it doesn't. It's not Star Wars. You know, there's no Luke Skywalker. There's no Darth Vader. There's no, it's the story's not even very good in the show compared to like the overarching space opera arc of good people in Star Wars. They don't even explain what the fuck happens.
You're the only person who wants that.
That's not true.
I want that.
That's not true.
I want to know. I've only watched a few episodes of the TV show. I've only read a couple issues in the comic. That's one of the reasons why I don't think it'll be around forever, because eventually it will get old that these dudes are just like, hey, oh, cool, another zombie. Let's go to the store.
Yeah, you cannot create a story based on just surviving.
So what about when they do change that? What about when they do an iteration where they are going after the cure then?
Then that's different.
That's still the same thing.
Potentially,
See, I
but
think
then
you're underselling it, just like people undersold Star Wars at the time, probably.
Here's the thing that I didn't...
Star Wars wasn't super popular in theaters forever. It did 3 movies and went away into its expanded universe where super nerds got into it. And I think that's where this will always fall back.
Yeah,
the
but
TV
Star
show
Wars-
will fall away.
But Star Wars went away for 10 years before the expanded universe really took root with Timothy Zahn and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I think for that to happen, The Walking Dead has and will go away. And like, I don't think it's that IP. I think you can look at other shows and other things where, where that's more likely to happen than it is with The Walking Dead. I think, in my opinion, I think
it's all opinion based. We can't look in the future.
But like, I think The Walking Dead doesn't have more than a few years left of being relevant. I mean, in my opinion, I just think it's going to come and
my
go.
thing is, what do you think is it being relevant?
I think it
Like
will.
you're saying the TV show goes away and the games go away. The comic keeps going. Is that
Right,
relevant
but
enough
then
for you?
that's not relevant. I mean, comics
It's not
are
Star
just
Wars.
comics are not relevant.
Yes, it is. When Star Wars movies ended,
No, but see, that's the difference. If The Walking Dead were to go away suddenly for 20 years, do you think people would still be insane about it?
20 years is the point of Ninja Turtles and Transformers.
No,
It's
what
like
I'm saying is-
Battlestar,
What I'm
20
saying
years.
is Star Wars,
Between Battlestar.
the last Star Wars that anyone really cares about came out in what, like 83? And then it went away for a really long time, and our society is still huge fans of
Enamored
it, right?
of that old trilogy and mad at the new trilogy.
Right, but it's still irrelevant. My point is, if Walking Dead were to suddenly be like, okay, we're done, I don't know that anyone would care about it beyond a year later.
I think one thing why Star Wars does well is because parents who like to film pass it on to their children. I don't think Walking Dead is something they're going to pass on to their
really,
children. Yeah, I don't think
you
so.
don't think that like the next generation of kids will like zombies?
I don't know. I don't think Walking Dead as the film or the TV show, or there's no film, but I don't think parents are going to kind of live out their fantasies on to their kids like people do with Star Wars.
I just want to say I'm not questioning the validity of The Walking Dead or the validity of comic books. But if The Walking Dead only reverts back to comic books, then it becomes irrelevant again.
What I'm saying is I don't want to
like-
have this argument with you in 5 years when the TV show and games are done and it's still trucking as a comic. You're like, see, I told you. And I'm like, no, I'm saying the long game, it's as big as Star Wars. And Star Wars had its dips too.
We'll see. I mean, I always
in
think,
20 years,
I
that's
think,
when he
I
touches
think about
again.
I think about X-Men, right? Like X-Men was this thing, that was huge out of cartoon and toys and stuff like that. But X-Men really only became relevant in the public consciousness when the movies came out.
Right.
And like the same thing with the Avengers and Batman. Even I mean, the 1989 Batman movie.
Put
was
Batman on a different level.
Yeah, was the return of Batman for the
That's-
first time since the fucking sitcom.
That's when I stood up and paid attention to Batman for the first time.
Right,
I wasn't a
exactly.
huge
So
fan
like
until I saw the movie.
it needs something like that, right? Like, but like I agree. Like Walking Dead is not sustainable without going into a further plot about what happened.
I think, so here's what I would say is going to happen then is that the show ends, games end, comics continue for whatever, and they do their own thing. But then the movie that comes back in 10 years is different, not about Rick, not about Carl, but it is about trying to, zombies are there and how do you find the cure, and they're chasing that, and that's
I think
franchise.
that's franchise gold. That's what every movie studio or IP developer dreams of, right? A franchise that no matter how long it's been out of the public consciousness is still relevant. I think that when the Walking Dead TV show ends, it's going to just disappear. I don't think there's anything that's going to stop that from happening. I don't know if they're going to do movies about it because they will already have done 8, successful seasons of TV.
Well, that's like saying why'd they do the Batman movie? They already had the Batman TV show.
That was like the 60s though, and it wasn't very.
It was bad. It was
popular
campy
back
and shit.
then, yeah.
It was different. It wasn't bad.
But
and that's what I'm saying about this is that
they could.
someone can take this brand and do something different with it.
I don't think
expand
there'll
on
ever
it, or
be.
do anything.
I don't think there'll ever be another Star Wars. Is this the closest thing we'll ever get to it? Possibly, but I mean, like, I think if Harry Potter isn't that, I don't know if we'll ever.
Well,
Yeah,
Harry
that's
Potter,
a great
but see,
point.
Harry Potter is that. In that,
It has a whole
and
deep part.
this is a point to Greg's credit.
Hi, welcome to the Game Over Greggy show.
I'm Craig Miller, filling in for Greg Miller. Was that Harry Potter? You could fire back up like this. In fact, they're making another movie. The second that happens, the marketing machine will kick in again, and everyone will go right back into it. I'll go right back into it. That's another one of those things that I'm going to pass to my kids whenever Greg has them.
Godzilla, new film coming out in a few months. That's something that has transcended years and years and years. There used to be really campy Godzilla movies, really bad one in the U.S. People obviously
Matthew
hate.
Broderick.
And there was a good.
I love that movie so much.
Maybe 8 years.
Come with me.
There's a good Rage Against the Machine song on that.
We're gonna get a
soundtrack.
copyright strike on that because it was so close.
Yeah, there is a good rage song. No Shelter, right?
Yeah, No Shelter is a good song. But there was a good 8-year gap where there was no Godzilla movies in the U.S. It was only in Japan only.
Yeah.
But now everyone's freaking out about this Godzilla movie, but I don't know.
Yeah, but they're figuring out about it for a number of reasons. One, it looks cool, and two, it just looks cool. I don't think Godzilla has ever been really in the American mainstream
I would.
There's
Godzilla is one of those
heavy metal song about
Let
it.
me ask you this question: Do you
things.
think? Oh my god! I hope they make multiple Godzilla movies. No, you're gonna go see that Godzilla movie and be like, "That was cool," and never think about it again.
When
There's
I
not
was
a lot-
8 and I saw the Matthew Broderick one,
God, you were 8
I
when that
wanted
came out.
a
It's
sequel
unbelievable.
so bad.
That movie
What
was
year was
terrible.
98.
Godzilla's not a franchise that's anywhere
Oh.
close to on par with Star Wars or.
Well, but
I'm
that's,
sure they'll make more of them.
But that's the point. nothing's on par with Star Wars. I've mentioned it once or twice. I read the trilogy by J.W. Rinsler about the making of Star Wars, the making of Empire, the making of Jedi, and that highly recommended books. They're excellent, and that was a phenomenon that came out of fucking nowhere.
It started a genre.
Yeah, like
for all intents and purposes.
but like it was like people first looked at it as like, is it just a Star Trek clone? What the fuck is this? Why is it be called a space opera? And then it became its own thing. Like The Walking Dead is like 1/1000th of like what Star Wars was and is in terms of marketing power. You know, toys and shampoos and like they were talking about how Lucasfilms could have made like 25, 30, 50, 100 times more money than they did, but they were like selective about like what they were licensing.
Because they could have kept going.
Because they could have just been like, oh, we have shampoo and these curtains
which
and all
is what
these
we're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, I don't know if anything will ever be Star Wars again. I think The Walking Dead, in terms of nerd popularity, in terms of nerd culture, is huge. But this is what I think about Game of Thrones. Right? Game of Thrones is excellent. The books have been around for a long time, long before the show came out.
Sure.
He was writing these books, and it's high fantasy, right? High fantasy with a magical twist, all that kind of stuff, great stuff. But what is the timeless high fantasy? Tolkien, right? Tolkien's never going to go anywhere. But Game of Thrones will go somewhere. Game of Thrones is not going to last forever, you know? And people are not going to care about Game of Thrones in 15 years.
And this is what I'm saying with Harry Potter and Game of Thrones, is that you're dealing with established lore, literature, books that have an end. It gets weird when you're like, we're going to make another Harry Potter film, but there's no other book. People get that. Walking Dead, they branched out in so many different ways now that there is an expanded universe, that the Telltale games aren't dependent on Kirkman's comic, and the TV show isn't dependent on the comic, and the board game isn't dependent on, you know what I mean? There's all these different legs to it.
How do the games sell? Like, I know everyone loves them, but do they sell well?
They do well enough.
well.
I mean, Telltale seems pretty happy.
But I thought the general consensus was that the season 2 wasn't as good as season 1, at least so far.
From episode 1?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't follow the game that much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, no, people...
I'll wait till they're all out.
I mean, the review was lower from IGN from it. I didn't review it, and clearly I'm a money hat, but
You are a damn
I'm
money
a
hat.
big time money hat. Look at my
Cash in
Rick
some
Grimes statue. No,
Put $100
Looks like
bill on
Leon
that.
from fucking Resident Evil
we've
4.
already talked
It
about
does.
this on the show. But yeah, no, I mean, like, I think it's way too early to judge.
And also, it's a pretty safe bet that any TV shows run their course eventually, right? Lost was one of the biggest TV shows ever. I loved it for the first 3 seasons, and then after a while, I was like, when are they gonna get off this?
Quick enough.
When are they gonna get off this damn island? And I feel like that might be the same for me with Walking Dead. It's one of the turnoffs. I know it's gonna be one of those shows where they never really explain why they're zombies.
It's
and
infuriating.
I don't want to know
It's absolutely infuriating. I like Greg knows, like the point of The Walking Dead where I got really frustrated was in the first season where they started to talk about it and they're just like, never mind. You know, like they go to the
We're never gonna know.
They go to like the CDC and they're like, oh, I'm like, oh, lore, awesome. Lore is really important if you want to have a story. You know, you can't just tell a story about people forever in this environment. Cormac McCarthy did it with The Road. Everyone always brings up The Road. The Road is 180 pages long. You know, it's not been going on for, years and years,
right.
episodes and episodes. The Road is like a contained story. You're not supposed to know what happened. That's the idea.
But I mean, this all comes back to just the fact of it's something you don't like. And I know other people with you, don't get me wrong, but this goes back to like Arrow. You don't like comics and you don't like suspending your disbelief long enough. I've seen enough zombie movies. I don't give a shit if it's government cheese that did it to them, or if it's some kind of smoke, or if it's the fucking rage virus.
Smoke?
I'm playing a lot from Return of the Living Dead, which we're gonna walk with Michael Rosenbaum.
All right.
No, but I mean, like, it's just
really
I don't care. There's never going to be a great believable solution
Yeah.
to why the dead walk the earth.
Like,
all
no
of a
matter
sudden.
what happens, you're going to be unhappy with that.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
no,
So
that's
just
not
let
true.
it go. Not true.
Because in 28 Days Later, when they just start dying because they run out of food, like all the zombies, I thought that was gratifying. I was like, oh, there is a solution to this. Just don't let them eat you, and they'll eventually die.
Right.
They built that mechanism in as an out. But I don't see that in The Walking Dead. Eventually, what they're going to start doing is they're going to start going back to other people's stories. When this cast goes on to other stuff, they're going to try that one season where they're like, some other guy wakes up and it's right after the zombie apocalypse, and they're going to go from there, and it's probably going to fail.
Well, hopefully they
could
follow
do
Carl,
movies.
like I'm saying. Yeah.
They could do movies.
Yeah.
I'll rescind that prior statement, and they probably will, but it'll be years later after. It's
Yes,
been
that's
out
what
of
I'm
the public eye for a
saying.
while.
Again, this isn't all going to happen tomorrow. I'm saying that this is the long game of Star Wars.
Is the real world still on?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
it really is.
We were in San Francisco.
they're
Yeah, they're
shooting in
back
San
in
Francisco.
San Francisco. 20 years after the original.
What up,
damn.
Puck?
It's the original San Francisco cast 20 years
They're
later.
just 60 years old.
I don't know, man.
Silver
Puck,
bike
Puck
messenger.
put his finger in the peanut butter.
He
I
did.
remember that.
It really got Pedro mad.
Then, like, when you do that.
That's probably the most seminal
something.
season of the.
Oh yeah, that was like a defining thing for everyone.
But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe it's just my own personal preference, but I just think zombies are.
I think the zombie story is just I can't.
They're not vampires, that's for sure.
We all keep saying that, but they all keep doing stuff.
Well, like vampires came back. Vampires are not new. Vampires go back to Stoker and before that, and like it comes back, and then we have it in games with Castlevania, but then Castlevania goes away, and then Twilight and all, but like or True Blood and all this kind of stuff. Like it's always there, and I'm not saying zombies are going to disappear completely, but like it's just too much now.
I think pirates are going to be the new thing in the next 5 years. We're about pirates.
They were already a thing.
Pirates and ninjas.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what are you talking about? That I mean, like people. What about Pirates of the Caribbean? That was fucking huge. You couldn't get away from Johnny Depp and his shit.
And they have that new show, right? Black Flag or
Black
yeah.
Sails.
Black Sails.
Mm-hmm. I just feel like if Walking Dead were going to be Star Wars, it would already be Star Wars. Star Wars was something that came from nowhere and blew up and stayed amazing for years. Walking Dead just not, to me, I don't see it as anywhere close to Star Wars right now, let alone 20 years from now. Like it's just not. It's nowhere close to as big a franchise. It never. I don't think it ever will be.
So here's what I think. Maybe we're taking away from different angles here.
Yeah.
Is that I'm not saying it's going to be shampoos and conditioners and shower curtains or whatever. I'm sure there's shower curtains. I'm saying that because I don't think that age exists anymore. Now we're talking about the fact that there's a million different forms of media pulling you away. Do you know that when I bought a Mizzou shower curtain when I was moving into this house, and then I got here for day one, I noticed we had sliding door. God damn it! What did I buy this?
Did you legitimately think, how can I take the sliding door off?
Yeah, there was a conversation in my head. I was single at the time. Anyways, though, I don't think with as many distractions as we have, sure, it's not going to take over. I'm saying that this is going to be with us as long as Star Wars.
The zombie genre.
Walking Dead. Walking Dead is the zombie brand. There's no zombie brand outside of this.
Do you think that the age gate that's on it makes
that's what I say with Star Wars is you have families who when they have kids, they make them watch Star Wars. They say you have to watch this movie, and I think when they're little, when they're like 8, 9, 10, I don't think you're gonna have parents putting Walking Dead onto their kid's face when they're that young.
When there's a Walking Dead cartoon, a funny, quirky cartoon where they're like
holiday special,
similar to real Ghostbusters, where there's one fun zombie and then they're all out after these other zombies and supernatural capers.
That'll be the beginning and the end.
See, I just feel like
that's how the zombies start.
I just feel like the franchise is going to fall into the same thing where the TV show is going to end, it's going to get out of the public eye for a while, and then something else zombie related will pop up, and that'll be the new jam. Like same with vampires, right? Twilight was huge, and then it's gone. Again,
because it was based on literature with an end.
Yeah,
it wasn't based on something that has no end. It can be taken.
I don't know. I mean, there's been so many different genres, or so many different zombie themed movies and TV. Well, not TV shows, but movies in the past, and they came and went. I just don't know that.
Well, here's the other thing to think about too. Yeah, they came and they went, but we're talking about the road. We're talking about books. We're talking about when we talk about zombies in particular. We're talking about Return of the Living Dead, old quote unquote movies, right? Every kid who turns 13 and wants something cool and gross and creepy is why not look at The Walking Dead? Your parents have these omnibuses on their shelves. They're at the comic book store lauded as this like achievement in comics. It's similar when we talk about games, right? Like if you want a history in games, you go back and start playing from the 8-bit or you play the classics. You do this. Someone's going like you're talking about like parents passing it down. It's more like fat nerds like me that'll be single the rest of their life saying, "Oh my god, yo, you like I'm watching them watch some terrible zombie movie. I'm like, you like that? You should watch this."
Yeah, but
not to mention the fact if Netflix is still a thing wherever the future we're going,
it will be.
It's always there's going to be this library of content, including this Walking Dead show that was there for.
Sure. I mean, I think there'll still be people who remember it, and there'll still be people who love it. Yeah, there's always new people that find it, but I just don't see like 20 years from now, Star Wars they'll still be making Star Wars movies, and people will still be stoked about that.
They will.
What's that?
He said they will.
Oh, they will. Yes, they will. They will
Shut
still
up,
be.
Jim.
Sorry.
I think that 20 years from now they won't. I don't see The Walking Dead being that kind of a franchise where I think it'll just burn out and then come back as a movie and then maybe another movie and then that's it.
I think of two things, right? I think a direct parallel, even though it's not a zombie movie, to Walking Dead is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles started in the mid-'80s as a graphic novel that was actually kind of dark and dire, right? It turns into this movie and this cartoon that becomes really big. It becomes a toy phenomenon, disappears in the mid-'90s, like without a fucking trace, right?
Tim, is he back that?
It disappeared for like 4 years.
Turtles 3 came out and then no one talked about it ever again.
Yeah, well, Turtle 3 was
no, that's
Turtle
not,
3.
That's
Turtles
not true at all.
Why can't I break
like,
what happened after that?
Turtles, the cartoon went into syndication.
Right.
Which is what I grew up with.
Right.
And then
That's
it
your
immediately
solution.
transitioned into the not Nickelodeon, the Fox Kids show, I want to say. The 2000 series.
Yeah. So we're that's what I'm saying. Like the syndicated cartoon that we grew up with, and the
Ended in
two
96.
movies that were really relevant to us ended, right? And then Turtles became like this thing where it was kind of like something that our generation looked back on fondly. Then it was reignited. The same thing happened with G.I. Joe when G.I. Joe was canceled in '94, and then G.I. Joe Extreme came out. But then they have like the new like anime style G.I. Joe, and G.I. Joe is somewhat still relevant. And I can see the other example I can think of that I think is more relevant with TV is Battlestar Galactica, which was a show in the late '70s and '80s, and then they reimagined it in the early 2000s and totally changed it, and it came back. So I can see, and Battlestar Galactica's reimagining was fucking awesome. You know, so much better than the original. The original one sucks. So, like, and I tried to get Greg to watch it. I think it's just an absolutely brilliant show. But I could see like two scenarios similar to that happening, where like Turtles isn't this huge phenomenon; it just exists and it still exists.
But it was when
started
it was
as
its
a
first
comic.
thing.
Well, it's big now too, but I'm saying it started as a comic, became a cartoon, toys, all these kinds of things, kind of went away, came back, never.
I don't think it ever went away.
Yeah, it definitely did.
Definitely went
It
away.
definitely
When did
went
it go
away.
away?
It was huge in the 80s.
Yeah, I don't think you
What-
understand how big
and then
Turtles
just
was.
Huge in the 90s.
No,
Wait,
no.
wait,
No, it wasn't nearly
Turtles,
as big.
Ninja Turtles.
What
There was
was?
never
There was
a
not a turtle
period.
property.
There was never a period where there wasn't Ninja Turtle toys dominantly featured.
Sure, but there wasn't a show. There
yes,
wasn't
there
a
was.
vehicle.
The show ended in '96.
I'm gonna look it up.
Turtles?
Yes, and
I
it
don't think
immediately
so.
was led up by the live action show, Live Mutation, which sucks,
Oh, that
but
was
for
terrible.
little kids,
See,
does
I think-
it,
yeah,
which
well-
immediately went into the
See, I just
show
don't think, I think what Greg's talking about is the sustainability. Turtles.
No,
hit.
I'm not. I'm saying
Turtles
that
hit
Star Wars
peak.
was a big thing when it first came out. Then there was years of not silence, little things happening here and there, and
Sure.
then there were more movies, but the fans were always there. That's what I'm saying here, is that there's going to be peaks and valleys, but I'm saying The Walking Dead is with you right now for the rest of your life. That there will always be some kind of Walking Dead thing happening.
Maybe, but I don't know. As
And
I,
that,
I
is,
can,
that still isn't even my
So-
point.
so are
Within
you
a reasonable time period, there will
Yeah,
always
yeah,
be
Do you
something
think there's gonna be
happening.
like Walking Dead conventions?
Yeah.
no.
Okay, well
No.
then,
Only because they run concurrently with a comic convention. Again, it's not. We're not at the point where you have to like hit up backroom message boards or whatever. Like, you know, find an ad in your local paper for this kind of stuff, right? There's always going to be Walking Dead memorabilia, just like Chewbacca is still at every fucking Comic-Con. If he didn't die, rest his soul if he did.
Well, sure, but I mean, they're still doing. They're still doing.
When did it end? When did it end?
Yep. So Turtles, first of all, it says Turtles' height was by far in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah,
in
it
terms of
definitely
popularity.
was.
But also, it went away in 96 and didn't come back until 2003. So that was what...
But that's not true. Next Mutation was in between then.
Yeah, but that
There's
failed.
so while Colin looks it up, there's two Ninja Turtle toys that I want to highlight. There was one, it was a garbage dumpster guy. He had a trash can on his back, and he had like a sewer cover on his foot. And you put ooze in the back of his head, and it'd come out of his mouth and his eyes. I think that's what happened. And there was another one where you'd fill it with water. It was like he had like arms and legs on like a fish tank kind of thing. You have things floating around in the anyway. Those are my two favorite turtle toys.
So it says,
When did Live Mutation happen?
So the live action one lasted one season, was
Yeah.
canceled, and then from 98 to 2003, there was nothing.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm talking about. So Ninja Turtles had this massive... It's like Star Wars, the same arc, right? Star Wars is never going to be as popular as it was from 77 to 83. And 85, Return of the Jedi was
Well, see,
re-released, and then it like went away. Indiana Jones seeded all that kind of stuff. The 80s was awesome for movies. It went away, blah, blah.
Okay, so we're admitting Star Wars went away at some point.
Oh, I said that in the beginning. Star Wars
I'm
did
just
went
well,
away.
he was. I think a few other people at this table were arguing that
Star Wars absolutely went away.
All right.
No, Star Wars went away, but it was never. There was never
never out of our
any
time.
doubt
When did-
that if they made another Star Wars movie, it wasn't going to blow up.
when did it release on VHS? Because that was kind of the big moment for that.
Like,
franchise.
Oh, that box set was 95.
let me ask you a
So
question.
there was like it wasn't that. I mean, that reignited Star Wars.
The black box
No.
that you're
Yeah,
talking about, right? Yeah, I remember that.
oh, because they re-released them in theaters.
No,
So
no,
you
that
could-
Oh, that was a
wasn't-
special edition. That was later. That was
Oh, God, those are
97.
the
They're like,
worst, too.
there was three of them. They're all black. It had like
I remember
Star Wars.
It's the
in
Drew
blue.
Stans. They did the posters for them
Yeah,
that were
yeah,
like
yeah.
black and it's
Yeah.
Drew Struzan. Awesome documentary on Netflix about
Anyway,
it.
I just think that we can see The Walking Dead follow a similar arc to Turtles. Never quite goes away. Always popular with someone. Starts with comic book roots, dark roots,
But-
becomes a little more lighthearted, maybe a little more children oriented, possibly. It happened with Star Wars too. That's why Star Wars sucks.
No, but here's my thing. Star Wars goes away, right? Comes back. They have a couple DVD things or a couple VHS things. They make the special editions. They release them in theaters. Then the new movie comes out, and every single person in the world lines up. That's a big hyperbole, but a lot of people line up for days, camp out for days, just to be one of the first people that see this movie. And you're telling me that you expect that Walking Dead's going to be anywhere close to that
I don't think
fan
he's saying-
mania.
I'm not. You're right.
He's in terms of like just the franchise will be with us the rest of
Sure,
our
of
lives.
course it will,
In some
because it'll always
capacity.
be a license, just like the Last Starfighter is still relevant somewhat, because there's always a license
It
that's
is
out there.
not. No, that is
Well,
not.
I'm saying
relevant.
they could fire that up and people would be like, oh,
There's
I was
no-
a fan of
there's
that back in the
no-
day. That's awesome. Or
yeah, but there's-
Tron. Tron's a perfect example. People were like, Tron, oh, they're making another Tron movie. That's cool. I'll go see it.
But
And then
it's
now
not-
gone.
I think though
There's
Greg,
never been there's no Tron cartoon or Tron comic.
There
is
are
there?
Tron cartoons.
That
There's
were like
multiple Tron cartoons.
filling in the gaps, continuing the
Tron
stories
cartoon
while
right
things
now.
are happening.
Yeah. No, I mean it's not a big. No. It's not nearly on the level of.
Does
of
Tron
what
have an
Walking Dead is.
expanded universe?
But everything
The
has
Tron
books.
cartoon now is awesome.
Tron 2.0.
Please
That's fucking
grow up.
It's
No,
fucking
it's
awesome.
really cool.
As we talk about
but,
The
but Greg,
Walking Dead.
everything. But Greg, everything has an expanded universe now. Everything's got a game. Everything's got a book. They write books on every movie. There's that Liam Neeson book, like movie where he's an air marshal. He's taken in like space.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, and the airplane where it's like
He's an air-
every 20 minutes I'm going to kill someone.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
That's got a book.
No, it doesn't.
I don't know. I made that up.
Back
God
that
damn
up.
it, Nick.
But there's a difference between having a book and having an expanded universe.
true. That's
there was
true.
a movie adaptation of Spawn that I read. All right, like it doesn't.
Why?
Yeah,
what
yeah.
led you to that?
I liked reading books.
I feel like Harry Potter and Pokemon are the biggest things to happen
Pokemon,
for me growing up.
Pokemon's huge.
But Star Wars still eclipses both
All
of
of them.
those.
Sure.
Here's
But-
what you have to ask yourself based on capital monetization of these properties, right? Just in your mind, right?
I asked
Star
myself
Wars
about
cost
capital.
$4 billion to get the rights to. $4 billion. That is an exorbitant amount of money. The Walking Dead, how much do you think it would cost a company to get the rights to The Walking
$1
Dead?
billion.
No, not even close.
I think it costs $1 billion.
No.
I think $1 billion is
No, I would say
outrageous.
to get the rights to The Walking Dead, everything that was made for The Walking Dead and everything in the future of The Walking Dead would cost $150 million. $200 million.
No, that's crazy.
No,
Yeah,
I
but
think
that's,
it's absolutely
that's not a fair comparison because that WhatsApp thing just sold for like $19 gazillion, and all that does is send text messages.
That's
so
tech.
everyone's a little skewed on that.
That's
stuff.
tech. That's not IP.
That's true. That's true.
Who owns Walking Dead franchise? Who owns that?
Skybound.
So I don't think he'd sell it for less than $1 billion.
Oh, Robert Kirkman is if you're looking for a person.
Or whatever. I don't think they'd sell less for $1 billion.
I'd sell it for $1 billion.
I think someone would actually buy it for $1 billion.
Because you have to think about it this way. It's not about like what the perceived value of it is intrinsically. It's about how much money you think you can make off of it after you put everything into it. You know, and you're not going to make $1 billion back on buying.
I think someone with $1 billion would buy it and think they could.
You could potentially if you made like 5 movies
and $1 billion in
and
profit.
toys.
I mean, remember
not
how-
profit.
I mean,
Now,
like-
then what's the point?
Remember how the
long term.
shitty first-person shooter game sold super well? That charted really well on MPD. Like if you put money back behind what you bought and put stuff out like the Telltale games, like the comics, like the books, like the novels. I mean, like
Yeah, but
Well, do you think how quickly do you think Disney's going to make $4 billion off Star Wars?
it will take them probably 20 years, 25 years to make that back in profit. Yeah, absolutely.
But they'll make it back.
Yeah.
No, they absolutely will make it back. But Star Wars is Star Wars. They already have
Yeah.
6 movies planned.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like six movies
How much do you think per movie? $200 million per movie?
in profit.
to
No,
make?
to make.
Oh no.
Oh, to make it.
200 to 300.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a film expert, but
How much do you think each film is going to gross $1 billion?
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
So yeah.
So after marketing and all that kind of stuff, paying your
But the
taxes,
films-
they're going to make about $100 million in profit on each movie.
But the films are not where you make the money.
No, it's merch.
The merch, man. They're gonna sell so many toys, Lego toys, every toys. They're gonna make billions.
toy, every toy.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's what I'm saying is like they bought the rights to do all these things with all of these pipelines already, right? Like Legos alone with Star Wars is fucking huge. I know because my nephews are obsessed
Legos
with
is
that
the
shit.
other thing. Like, Legos is the next Star
Legos
Wars.
have been around forever.
Legos.
Yeah, I know, but
Legos. They say Legos is an institution as well. Like
It
Star
is,
Wars
but-
is an institution.
But I'm going to say this about Legos too that I think you guys can understand because we all grew up at the same time. Is that Legos wasn't what it is now.
No.
when we
No,
were kids.
no,
Not
no.
even fucking
No,
You
no.
can't, you can't buy like just a regular set of Legos anymore.
No, I used to just buy a bucket of Legos. Like my
yeah, I
parents
was
would
gonna
never
say,
buy
do you
me
have
the
the
special
bucket?
ones.
Do you have the bucket?
Yeah, I had a few of those because I used to build these huge castles and shit.
I like to buy like the medieval sets and all that shit, but you can't buy that. It's all themed sets now.
Yeah, and they're expensive as shit.
Yeah.
They're really, really expensive. I guess what I'm saying is like these things come and go, but I feel like The Walking Dead. You know, we talked about video games making a lot of money. We talked today on Podcast Beyond about how Grand Theft Auto 5 made $800 million in its first day. Right? That's Grand Theft Auto, and that's also a $60 product. And that wasn't all just profit. They made that game forever. Hundreds of people worked on that game for years. They probably made a ton of money. You know, they certainly paid for the game in its first day. But
Sure.
like, so with a property like that, the Grand Theft Auto property, frankly, isn't even worth what Star Wars is worth. Not even close.
Oh, yeah.
And if that's not worth it, then The Walking Dead is not worth.
Yeah, I
more
guess
than
we're
a few
still.
$100 million.
I feel like the argument's still getting skewed, and don't get me wrong. I'm glad we're dissecting it, just in a way that I don't intend. Again, I don't think you can have. We're talking about Star Wars dominating and being dominant for so long because the playing field was so much smaller. And so when it gets to this larger size, I don't know. I'm saying it's here the rest of our lives. There will be something happening with Walking Dead. There will be time periods where there's silence.
Well, it's fair to say, but you can't say it's the next Star Wars.
No, no, you're making
It was your wrong. It was a wrong term.
You're right. Well, exactly. I was coming at it from a much different perspective than you guys are. So we've decided
I
it is
will
not.
Go ahead, sorry.
It is not the next Star Wars in terms of market share, domination, net worth. It is. I do think it's the dominant zombie franchise for the rest of our lives. I do think.
I don't know if I agree with that.
What do you think? Resident Evil?
I think the zombie franchise, like, it's easy for someone to come in and make a good zombie story and a good zombie movie. That The Walking Dead has to keep a high standard if it wants to keep going. I feel like zombies.
See, but what you just described, I think, goes the opposite way. Where they come in and they make a good zombie movie, then they'll make a shitty zombie comic, and it'll be with a dumb tie-in movie game. And
I don't know. I feel like the zombie stories aren't. It's much easier to make a hit, or I guess easier to make a hit than a sci-fi franchise.
And
really, I think it's the complete opposite. Think about like the number of zombie movies that are actually good and do well, like Night of the Living Dead, and then George Romero keeps trying, and they get worse every
they're
time.
getting worse. They're
They
getting
get
so
bad.
One's like Lunch with the Living Dead.
I think
and they're
in
just like
20,
chilling.
years, someone's gonna make a good zombie movie.
Yeah, that's
28. I like the 28.
the 28.
series.
Yeah, that was good. I'm ready for another one of those.
Shaun of the Dead was amazing.
Yeah.
But you
Not
even
really
brought
a
up
series.
Resident Evil, like Biohazard. That series is more profitable and has made more money and been more relevant, I think, in social consciousness for a longer period of time, actually, than The Walking Dead.
I think it's gonna change though.
Well, Resident Evil has been bad for a long time.
See, that's the
but,
thing. Now it's associated with being bad.
But Resident Evil from 96 to 2005 was pretty big, and made a lot of money. And there was movies and there was merch. There was movies. I mean, that's the big thing. Movies, popular movies. They kept fucking making them.
They're still making them, right?
Yeah,
They
and
are.
same with good actors in it, and they're supposed to be pretty good.
Ah,
think it's- I think
no,
it's-
they are
They're
not.
not supposed to be
no,
pretty good.
number one was decent,
that's
and
what
then
I'm saying. I thought
they
the
immediately tanked.
I thought the first two they didn't tank because they keep
They're
making
making
them.
money.
In terms, no.
He meant story-wise. Story-wise, they were terrible. He's right.
But
Guess what?
what's her
Again,
name?
anything you make to the theater somehow makes money. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
But I think that's the
Yeah,
one.
Mila Jovovich.
That's the one video game franchise that people will go that don't care about actually the video game. I feel like people will go Resident Evil for the movie. They don't think about the game. I think that's like the one kind of mainstream game movie
Well,
franchise.
Jim, a lot of people say that the Resident Evil series is much like the Fast and Furious series, in that there's a lot of them, and people go and see them.
That's basically the
Oh,
only.
right.
That's basically the only similarity between those two
Who
properties.
moved my Pringles can, by the way?
I did. Sorry.
I
Nick,
never,
Nick, the guy who chastised you and said don't eat them on the
And
show,
I was like,
began
they're
eating
so
them
good.
on
I just
the
don't remember you
show.
ever doing it. It just like disappeared.
They just left.
I'm curious to go back and watch the show when you did it, like what I was doing.